In June 2024, it was announced that P&O Cruises Australia would shut down in 2025. P&O Cruises Australia is one of Australia's most iconic travel brands and has a long and illustrious history. The company originally started as part of the Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company, but since 2003 has been part of the Carnival Corporation. So with this news, let's take a look at the history of P&O Cruises Australia to understand what the Australian cruise market will be farewelling in 2025. The story of P&O Cruises began at the dawn of steamships, with the Peninsula Steam Navigation Company, which was founded in 1835. Envisioned as a small cargo and passenger service, PSN Co. originally linked Great Britain with Europe through the Iberian Peninsula. In 1840, the line set its sights on expansion and was reorganised as the Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company, or P&O. As P&O grew, so did its network, with the line establishing a number of voyages to various destinations across the British Empire. By the turn of the 20th century, P&O was a dominant force in shipping and a household name in both the United Kingdom and Australia. And so over the 19th century and into the 20th century, they managed to expand their fleet to touch all corners, and Australia was a huge part of that expansion. Well, so many people who live in Australia now can trace their heritage back to a voyage on a P&O ship. P&O was doing those line voyages that were bringing people to immigrate to Australia, and also very important in bringing people across and taking them home again if they wanted to visit friends and family back in other parts of the world. So many people have that connection to that, the early voyage on board the P&O ships and the ability to trace that heritage back. P&O had offered a form of cruising from the early days of its European voyages. Marketed then as the Grand Tour, travellers could book passage on several P&O ships to create their own round-trip itinerary. This was achieved by working with P&O to book passage on ships that had complementary itineraries. When these itineraries were combined, travellers could sail from port to port on different P&O ships, creating a round-trip cruise. Fast forward to the 1920s and cruising had become better defined, but the stock market crash of 1929 led to a stark decline in ocean liner voyages, leading P&O to increase their cruising activity. Mediterranean cruise offerings were combined into marketable pleasure voyages, which offered UK residents an affordable way to holiday. And on the other side of the world, the first Australian cruise took place on board the P&O ship Strathaired. This 1932 voyage departed from Sydney, bound for Norfolk Island. It was a cost-effective and fun break from the difficulties of the Depression years, and proved popular. As such, P&O gradually expanded the Australian offerings to take in other South Pacific islands as well as New Zealand. Skipping ahead again, and the shipping industry was about to face its biggest disruption yet, jet airliners. When Boeing's game-changing 707 took to the skies in 1958, the traditional passenger shipping business model started to crumble. Jet airliners made a lasting impact on P&O, not only in the UK and European market, but also in Australia, as Qantas was the first non-US airline to introduce 707 jets as early as 1959. A decade later, the drop in passengers on line voyages was exacerbated when Boeing 747 revolutionized long-haul flying. Wide-body jets meant flying became affordable, and travellers embraced airlines at the expense of ships. In order to survive, cruising became even more important to P&O, and during the 1970s, the brand transitioned its passenger shipping division into a cruise line. Many older ships were scrapped. Their largest liner, Canberra, was positioned in the UK market, while the 1959-built Oriana was sent to Australia to cruise out of Sydney. During this time, P&O expanded further by buying other cruise lines. They acquired Princess Cruises in 1974 and gobbled up Sitmar Cruises in 1988. All but one of Sitmar's cruise ships were transferred across to Princess Cruises, with the Australian-based Fairstar the only exception. Fairstar was already quite an old ship when P&O acquired her, with a heritage that dated back to 1957. However, her casual and relaxed onboard atmosphere made her the most popular cruise ship in the Australian market. Fairstar offered fun, low-cost cruises for Aussies wanting to have a party weekend or a week-long getaway on a ship with no formalities or minimum dress code. Because of Fairstar's unique hold on the market, P&O decided to retain her under an Australian brand, P&O Holidays. This brand shared the P&O name and the P&O house flag, but Fairstar, the only ship in the brand at the time, had her own unique marketing and even carried a unique dolphin logo on her funnel. From the late 1980s, we start to see two distinct brands forming. P&O in the UK continued to offer cruises with Canberra, expanding in the 1990s with the addition of Oriana, Victoria, and Arcadia. In the Southern Hemisphere, Fairstar was eventually replaced by the larger Fair Princess in 1997. This video is sponsored by me and my book, A Photographic History of P&O Cruises. Through wars, recessions, and the advent of the jet aircraft, discover how P&O both struggled and thrived, fighting against the odds to build and maintain supremacy on the world's oceans. This second edition of A Photographic History of P&O Cruises has been fully updated, covering recent events including the COVID-19 pandemic. Beautifully illustrated with historic photos from the Henderson and Cremer collection, as well as contributions from many P&O photographers. This book showcases some of the most beloved ships ever put to sea. A Photographic History of P&O Cruises is a must-have for the ship enthusiast. Sky Princess was transferred to the newly rebranded P&O Australia in 2000. She wore a new blue livery with distinctive yellow font on the funnel. The 2003 merger of Carnival and P&O Princess coincided with a boom in Australian cruising. As such, the P&O Australia fleet expanded, with Pacific Sun and Pacific Star, two former Carnival Cruise Line ships, joining the fleet. In 2006, Pacific Sky left the fleet, and in 2007, she was replaced by the Pacific Dawn, the former Regal Princess. At 70,200 gross tons, this ship was a significant scaling up of the P&O Australian operation. When Ocean Village ceased its operations, Pacific Dawn was joined by the Pacific Pearl, the former Ocean Village, and the Pacific Jewel, the former Ocean Village 2. These three ships actually had origins in Sitmar Cruise Lines before its acquisition by P&O. The P&O Australia fleet was bolstered to 5 ships in 2015 with the acquisition of the Pacific Eden and the Pacific Aria, two former Holland America Line ships. The company celebrated this in November of 2015 with a 5-ship spectacular event in Sydney, where all 5 ships entered the harbour in unison. Although Pacific Pearl would leave the fleet in 2017, she was replaced by the Pacific Explorer, the former Dawn Princess. At 77,400 gross tons, she became the flagship of P&O Australia. The vessel is a Sun-class cruise ship and introduced a number of amenities for the P&O Australia fleet, including extra specialty restaurants and enhanced accommodation. In 2019, the Pacific Jewel was retired from service and sold to interests in India, whilst P&O focused on reorganising its fleet around 2 new ships that were due to enter service. However, this was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Those 2 ships would ultimately enter service with P&O post-pandemic and became the Pacific Encounter and the Pacific Adventure. With P&O having retired a number of its ships in the lead up to the pandemic, as well as the retirement of the Pacific Dawn and Pacific Aria during the pandemic, it left P&O Australia with 3 ships. Those ships have been sailing with the brand until today. In 2023, P&O Australia celebrated its 90th anniversary of Australian-based cruising. This was in recognition of not only the first voyage out of Sydney, which took place in 1922, but also the 1923 cruise season, which saw cruising really take off in the country. However, in 2024, it was announced that P&O Australia would close down in 2025. Pacific Explorer, the company's flagship, will leave the fleet in February of 2025 and is not yet known where she'll end up. However, her sister ships, Pacific Encounter and Pacific Adventure, will transfer to the Carnival Corporation's Carnival Cruise Line and sail in Australian waters wearing Carnival colours. Obviously, this is a very sad time for people who love P&O, and the announcement that the company will cease operations in Australia is quite a shock to many people in the industry. However, if you've got a P&O story or if you'd like to share your memories of travelling on board P&O cruises, please do so in the comments below, or reach out to us on the Big Cruise podcast. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found this video looking at P&O's history interesting. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, and check out our book, A Photographic History of P&O Cruises, for an in-depth look at the history of not just this brand, but the company that came before it, the Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company. Thanks once again for watching, and until next time, I hope to see you on board.